Hello, everyone, and welcome to Seriously Loco, the Seriously Crazy fan podcast for El Paso Locomotive FC, a proud member of the Beautiful Game Network, and brought to you by Icarus FC and Roughnecks Scarves. I'm your host, Phil Bakke, and tonight we've got a full house. It is the whole crew on for this one. I'm joined by Christian Canales. Christian, welcome back to the show. What's up?
Thanks for having me, man. Always, like I always say, it's good to be here after a win. So,
yeah, no, we always love to discuss the dubs, as we say, but it is this one in particular felt like, I don't know how you feel about this, but a little bit of a win that maybe we don't get last year.
Yeah, that sounds fair. I mean, like the go-ahead goal for the death wasn't exactly our calling card last year. So yeah, I think last year would have been a draw, especially considering the opponent. It definitely would have been a draw last year.
Yeah, that's fair to say as well. I'm also joined by Austin Young. Austin, what's going on, man?
Hey, how's it going? Glad to be back. Christian said always good to be back after a win.
Yeah, it was a win and with fans in place. So a little bit of a return to getting close to maybe a little bit of normalcy. I mean, was that cool for you to see?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, just seeing any kind of fans out there, and I'm pretty sure the players really enjoyed it. So, I mean, still wouldn't go myself, but, it's great to see them out there again and not having to hear artificial crowd noise come into the TV.
Yeah, fair enough. And we're also joined by our correspondent on the scene, our field reporter, Mikka Burrell. Mikka, what's up?
That makes me sound so legit. I like that. Yes, I was there. It was awesome. It was very hot. When you're inside for 5 months, you forget that it's real out there. But I enjoyed it a lot. It was a good match, and I'm having to train myself to not react like a fan in the press box. But that's a work in progress.
I'm telling you from now that you will never fully get control of yourself. It's not possible.
It is so hard. So hard.
Yeah, I think it's just a natural thing. I think we have too much emotion tied up in it for us to truly be completely partial in the press box. I think it might be a little different if there were more traveling press. I don't know if you feel that way. If there was more traveling press for USL and there was like a Monarchs guy sitting right next to you, that might make things a little different.
I don't know.
If there was someone next to me and like, a shirt, tie, and chinos, I might be like, oh, maybe I shouldn't act like that. But it's all homers in the box. So
yeah.
It's like, is it inappropriate to wear a jersey in the press box?
No, I like before the match, I planned like several hours ahead, like what I was going to wear, because any other time I'd be like, oh, a kit, scarf, check, like,
right.
So, yeah.
Well, before we get we got a pretty packed episode. We got a lot to talk about. We have obviously the win over Monarchs, the 2-1 that with that late winner from Bryam Rebellon. We also have a match cancellation and the first real effect of coronavirus on Locomotive's return to play. And then we have some listener questions, and then we will preview the match against New Mexico United. Big rivalry coming up and amplified by not only the fact it's taking place in El Paso, but the fact that more fans will be in attendance for this one. So a lot to talk about. But before we get to that, Mikka, I mean, as you and I especially have some business to attend to, our English clubs met in the Community Shield, and your club Arsenal got one over my boys, Liverpool, on penalties. I have to put that disclaimer out there, but a preseason trophy for Arsenal to follow up their FA Cup win at the end of last season, which feels like it was maybe 2 or 3 days ago. So yeah, how what were your thoughts coming away from a big kind of preseason statement from Arsenal?
I mean, obviously, I love it. Mikel Arteta is averaging a trophy every 24 matches or something ridiculous like that. 2 trophies in August. I think that's a first. No, obviously, the Community Shield is, I mean, it's, people joke it's the world's greatest friendly and what have you. And you do get a little piece of silverware, which it's not even a cup, it's a shield. So, I mean, I was just happy that we played relatively well. I think Liverpool looked a little sluggish. I think that kind of played into it. I mean, they had their starters out there, but those boys had played a lot of football. So, I mean, to put Ryan Brewster in there when he really didn't have a whole lot of time to warm up seemed like a big call from Klopp. And I really hope that doesn't shake his confidence, because he's just from a neutral perspective, he's a fantastic player. He did really well on loan at Swansea. And so hopefully that doesn't, affect him too much. But of course I'm happy for the win. I mean, it's not really, an important game, but winning breeds confidence, and Mikel Arteta's really turned it around for us. So it's cool to see.
Yeah. I mean, Christian or Austin, did you guys catch any of the game? I know Austin, being a United fan, kind of taints that whole fixture for him, I feel like.
Yeah, honestly, didn't interest me at all. I didn't even tune in. I knew what was going on, and I was like,
Yeah, I mean, but Ollie's at the wheel, so it's all no, I'm just kidding. No, it was. I think it was one of those where it was a kind of a strange game for a number of reasons. Obviously, the preseason or the off season being basically non-existent has been very, very odd. But I think one of the things that really struck me about this game is kind of the different feel around Arsenal. I think if you had said there was a 1-1 between Arsenal and Liverpool, which, I mean, we saw as recently as, not this past season, but the season prior at the Emirates, we saw a 1-1. And it was kind of along, I don't want to say the same lines, but it was like, Liverpool kind of struggling to create clear-cut chances, but still having some joy, maybe should have been a little more clinical, but Arsenal also scoring a fantastic goal. I think it was Lacazette at the Emirates a couple years ago, and now Aubameyang scores just an absolute banger in this one. So yeah, I think the vibe around Arsenal though is different because they just seem sharper and a little more threatening than they have in the past. Because I think as a Liverpool fan, if we had that much possession against Arsenal in the past, we weren't all that worried about Arsenal counterattacking or Arsenal being incisive. It wasn't really their game. They were very much the passing and possession oriented team. So it was a little scary to see incisive and threatening Arsenal because it could be a vibe for a season, on a full season now with Arteta in charge. And I think it was probably great for them to see their young players do well in another big game. And Christian, this may affect Wolves, but Ainsley Maitland-Niles kind of took himself off the market in this one, it felt like.
No, I mean, it is what it is, I guess. We'll just see what happens when the season comes around.
Yeah.
Like you said, it's just one of those matches where, I don't know, from what you were telling, because I didn't know much about the match itself, but from what you were telling me, it just seems like one of those things that, I don't know, maybe it's not even worth thinking about, as far as what happens in the season. It's kind of a glorified friendly, just like Mika said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I was happy for Takumi Minamino getting his first goal as well. And fun fact, first ever Liverpool player to score his first goal for the club at Wembley. So
damn.
Weird bit of trivia.
That's a crazy fact.
Yeah. But I know Mika, you like stan the Japanese players pretty hard, like worldwide. So,
oh yeah, for sure. Like I try to keep an eye on all of them, but it'll be a big season for Taki. I think. I mean, what's the plan with him? I'm assuming kind of the Firmino understudy, maybe even out on the wing sometimes.
Yeah, I think the benefit for him is he can play up top. In place of Firmino, and I think that's where he is best because he has a lot of those attributes in terms of being able to hold the ball up. He can play other players in, but he also presses extremely well when he's out of possession. So I think he is kind of the heir to the Firmino role, for lack of a better term. But he can also play on the wing. He can play in midfield. So he's a pretty versatile player. And I think that's ultimately why Klopp went out and got him. Cause he could play in like an advanced midfield. He could play as the Bobby understudy. Or he can, go in for Mane or Salah, like kind of at any point. So, he offers a lot. And I think he's, especially since the end of last season, quote unquote, he's shown a lot of promise. So I'm excited to see what he can do this season.
Definitely.
But the other big news in English football right now is Amazon Prime has just released the first 3 episodes of All or Nothing Tottenham Hotspur. And I mean, Mika, we were talking about this earlier today, but is this a documentary about Tottenham or is this a documentary about Jose Mourinho?
Well, spoiler alert, it's nothing.
Yeah.
Just off the bat. Like,
all nothing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's nothing. I mean, City got all.
Yeah.
Spurs get nothing. Yeah, it's like a Jose Mourinho puff piece. I mean, you can tell that he really loves the camera. And I think just generally speaking, like anytime you're on camera, I feel like you're naturally going to act different. So it's hard for me to really get to imagine that these players and especially Jose Mourinho really act like this if the camera weren't around. But it is funny to watch them lose. And, and I mean, it starts off with them getting knocked out, getting beaten in the Champions League final by your beloved. So it's an interesting watch. Nevertheless, it is a bit about Jose Mourinho more than it is about Spurs, but it's interesting.
Yeah.
Couple funny bits. I'm sure everyone has seen the memes floating around by now. So, but yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I binged it.
Yeah.
So I'm waiting for the next couple episodes to come out.
Yeah, I was a little upset. It was only 3 episodes. I mean, Christian, you said you saw the memes from it. I mean, as a newer fan to football, like what kind of reputation does Jose Mourinho carry with him? Does he have kind of a vibe around him as you kind of get more into the English game?
I mean, so here's what I know. I mean, he's won a ton of silverware. He wins for the most. Well, actually, I take that back. So I was listening to something on the radio where they were talking about him. And so I know that he wins a lot, but it seems what I've gathered is that he wins a lot at the beginning and then like completely tears the programs to shit by the time he leaves, is what I've gathered. And yeah, so those are the 2 things, that he wins at the start and then by the time he leaves, the programs are like a shell of what they were.
Christian has unlocked Jose Mourinho in just like 8 months of paying attention. Austin, I mean, you're a United fan, so you went through a Mourinho era as now.
He's shaking his head.
Did he leave a bad taste in the mouth of United fans?
Yep. Fuck Jose Mourinho.
Savage.
I've never liked him. I don't like him at all. Like, Christian hit it right on the nose. He just destroys anything goes.
Yeah. Well, and yeah, it is. I think the temptation is there for teams to see his track record and say, like, well, we could win a bunch in the next 3 seasons. And then you just have to know after that it's going to completely implode. that third season, it's all going to start to come apart at the seams. And in this case, I mean, he wasn't taking over the finished product. When he took over Inter and Real Madrid, like those were extremely good teams that he took over. And obviously he achieved great things. Inter in particular, I think we'll always think of Jose Mourinho as the treble winner, which is just something that hasn't really been done by an Italian team very often. So he's obviously achieved some amazing things in his career, but he also just has this destructive streak where whatever is left in his wake is just almost completely unrecognizable from the club that he inherited. And I don't know. I don't know that anyone will look back on his tenure at Spurs by the time it's over and say, wow, what a master stroke from Daniel Levy to hire Jose Mourinho and fire Pochettino, especially on the back of a European final. I think you would be kind of thankful for that, but apparently they got just cutthroat at that point. And yeah, I'm very interested to see how it plays out because there are so many scenes in it that seem staged. And yeah, it's very much kind of the Jose Mourinho show. But I will say that it's entertaining, if nothing else, which might sum up Jose Mourinho. Like it's entertaining, if nothing else. But yeah, that is the new content on Amazon Prime, and Seriously Loco has some new content as well. Mikka just dropped an article on our Patreon, kind of highlighting her experience from the match. Do you want to talk people through in case they're thinking of subscribing and finding out more about your piece?
Yeah, absolutely. I would love it if you all would check it out and give it a couple comments or tweet me, let me know what you think. But yeah, like Phil said, it's basically just my reflection on the match day experience. And I spoke with fans as well. Shout out to Punchy and Brian for Eighth Notch. And of course, Chris Babcock, the editor-in-chief of the El Paso Herald Post, also gave me his thoughts on it. So yeah, check it out. Let me know what you think. And I think it's locked right now for our patrons, but then after a couple days, it'll be available for everyone to read. So, would love your thoughts.
Yeah, we'll also
even talks a little bit about coming back to the pitch and worried about her first touch there.
Well, yeah, because I will say they were very direct with us, like don't touch the soccer balls, like please, because we'll have to disinfect it and we'll be really pissed. And I was like, oh God. So I have to actually like control it with my feet if it comes to me. And one did come towards me. And Kevin Quintana was next to me and he was able to get it back in place. So we're all good to go. But yeah.
So with that, 800 fans returned to Southwestern University Park in this win over Monarchs. And Christian, for you, I mean, watching this game and seeing people back in the stadium, as much as they were spread out, as much as the club took care to kind of make sure that everything was being done according to their protocols and all of that, did it return you to any sort of normalcy? Did it feel kind of like a normal game a little bit?
Well, I mean, watching on the TV, it still looks empty. So that is a little bit strange. But I think that just knowing that there are people there, and of course, I wanted to go. I ended up not being able to. But I think that just knowing that I could at this point, if I wanted to, it felt good. I'm hoping to maybe try and go to the next one. And, but yeah, it is nice to be taking kind of those little baby steps forward. As long as everyone is, being careful. I think that it was good to see that everything worked out. And it seemed like from what we heard from Mikka that it was managed pretty well. So that was good to know.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about you, and Austin, I'm sure you can speak to this, but I always feel comforted when I see a harsh foul and I hear a nice little chorus of "No mames way." Did that just make it feel kind of, I don't know, like a little bit more like a Locomotive match, like a normal match, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, just to kind of piggyback a bit what you're saying, it felt a little normal, like it felt more normal seeing actual fans of the game more than anything, maybe like a UTEP football game or something, you know?
Damn, shade.
They don't have 800 people at a UTEP football game.
Yo, Lou's gonna get pissed when he hears this.
No, hold on, really quick, before anybody asks me, I love UTEP football. I'm always gonna support them.
Why though?
Why?
Yeah.
Aaron Jones is the only reason. Like, that's the only reason to like UTEP football. I'm just kidding. Kind of.
We love you. Don't hate us.
Go for it.
It brought back normalcy. Like, just seeing fans there, hearing the chants. For those 2 hours watching the game, it kind of brought everything. Like, you kind of just zoned in on the game. And seeing people, the fans, you're like, okay, maybe, like, it felt normal for 2 hours, if that makes sense.
Well, and feeling normal for Locomotive, too, it was a win, but it was only just a win, not the statement kind of victory that at times the performance felt like it may have justified. I mean, Mikka, you were there, and the feeling of this game as it played out was that Locomotive were completely in control, but especially in the second half, it felt like that. But in the end, Locomotive really ended up not in control, and it took that late winner to kind of snatch the 3 points right at the end. So as it played out, I mean, how did this performance have you feeling?
Yeah, well, it's interesting because I forgot how tricky it is to watch Locomotive soccer in person, and especially from the area of the pitch that I was on, because I wasn't able to see like that tactical, like bird's eye view. So it looked probably more chaotic than it actually was. I think definitely in the first half, it felt more that way. And then we were able to kind of get our foot on the ball and play our game. But I just felt like there was really not a lot of fluidity in midfield starting out. And I think, and we'll probably get onto that, but I think it has a lot to do with Bryam Rebellon trying to fit into that side, and also the absence of Nick Ross, to be fair. Yeah, it wasn't classic Locomotive in the beginning, but I think it was in the end when you see the stats. So tale of two halves, I guess, to use a cliche.
Yeah, I mean, as you guys saw it on TV between Austin and Christian, I don't know how you guys felt, but I literally was sitting back and I caught myself right before Monarchs equalizer. I literally caught myself like, well, I guess we're just going to see this one out. Quick giveaway, counterattack, and all of a sudden it's 1-1. And it felt like so familiar as a Locomotive fan. Did you guys feel kind of just like that sinking feeling, I guess, that we normally have, where it's like, oh, we didn't have the finishing tonight and we just kind of let one get away. Did you guys have that feeling? And then, I mean, what makes this team different enough, I guess, to turn it around?
I mean, it certainly felt like that to me, especially, the timing of the equalizing goal. It seems silly, but like, at least to me mentally, there's like a big difference, like between 79th minute goal and 81st minute goal.
Yeah.
And, they score in the 81st minute, and it's like, well, like, that's it. We're not going to score again. We were lucky to get one, all this time. And so to ask for one in the last 9 minutes is a lot. So between that and the fact that, like you said, like, we had shot after shot after shot, and they weren't necessarily like hitting the crossbar or anything like that, but just good, shots that we were happy to see them take, especially Gomez,
right.
Just firing, having the total green light. and it just not going in, a combination of all of that just totally felt like familiar in a not so good way.
Right. Austin, you had something as well.
Yeah, I mean, Christian hit it right, and so did you. It just felt also familiar that when it happened, it was just like, what's new? Like, it was just expected to happen at some point. Like, if we would have gotten to like the 85th, 86th minute, it'd been like, okay, like, we got this, we're gonna get away with the win. But once they scored, that's like, all right, well, I guess be happy with the 1 point, you know. But it was like Christian said, just shot after shot. It's like when you play FIFA and you hit like 5 posts in a row, and you just know you're not gonna win that game. That's what it felt like going into, into that 80th minute, into that like 81st minute, and just being tied 1-1. It was like, yeah, nothing's going in for us, and just being happy with the tie at that point,
Yeah, and luckily we had Bryam Rebellon there to take a shot at the back post, both with his foot and his head at the same time. But at the beginning of this game, obviously there was a moment of reflection, a moment of kind of solemnity, for lack of a better term, just a somber recollection. On 7 minutes, both teams stop playing, gather around the center circle. I think up until this point, we've seen maybe not as overt of displays from Locomotive in support of things like Black Lives Matter and all of these social justice movements that have come out over the last few months, and kind of recognizing these events. Was it heartening for you guys to see kind of a overt recognition of what's going on from Locomotive, or what did you guys think of this display at midfield with Monarchs and Locomotive, especially in light of Monarchs owners' recent comments?
Yeah, I mean, and I kind of allude to this in my piece on Patreon, is that there's just so much going on in the world right now that soccer returning with fans at the stadium is kind of not that serious. You know what I mean? So for both teams to agree to kind of take that time to reflect on police brutality and racial injustice that's still going on in our country. And, also I think it had us thinking also about the pandemic too. I mean, we're at a professional soccer match during a pandemic. It's not over. You know what I mean? So
right.
I felt like it was just a time for everyone to kind of reflect and say, all these things are still going on in our lives, even though we're able to be here tonight and watch two teams kick a ball. There's more, and I'm obviously I'm grateful that we're having fans back and everything, but I think it's good to still recognize that there are bigger things going on, and the players and the league and the club are not, immune to those things, especially like you said, with what's going on with Delo Hansen. So, yeah.
Did you guys take anything away from that display? Especially watching on TV. I know it was, for me, a little bit, it was kind of crazy to see that overt display from Locomotive.
I don't know. I don't think so. As far as like, it didn't seem that like, I don't know what the word I'm looking for. I guess like extraordinary. I don't know. Not to minimize like the point of it, but I'm not surprised that the club decided to do it. I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Sure.
They're usually, by my opinion, on the right side of these kinds of things. So I would have been more surprised, and it would have been more profound if they had decided to not do something.
Well, sure. I think that's an interesting point you kind of bring up there, is that it is, at the end of the day, just a gesture. Right. I mean, we have to do more than wear Black Lives Matter bands or stand around the center circle for, minute 7. Not to say those things aren't nice. They are, but they're symbolic. And I think we're, wanting to make more change than that. And so it'll be interesting to see if Locomotive can kind of, I know they already are involved in the community and doing that kind of thing, but that it continues, obviously.
Sure. Yeah, I think that, you don't want it to be performative. Like, because I think that's the immediate kind of criticism is, oh, well, it's just for show. And so I think it's important that it's not just for show, because that's obviously, USL can like tweet hashtag United Against Racism and all of that, and it's all good, and it's good to kind of get the awareness out there, but I think everybody's aware of what's going on. Now it's a matter of actually doing something tangible. So it'll be interesting to see how that actually translates into something, hopefully that makes a lasting impact. But beyond the intensity kind of the whole occasion and the intensity, obviously, of that moment and the symbolism around it, a soccer match did occur, and we are going to talk about it. So the changes in midfield, Mika, we started talking about this, but we had seen Bryam Rebellon introduced in the last match into a midfield with Chapa and Yuma. This match, he stays put, but we see Distel Zola and Richie Ryan start with him. What did you make of the fact that we had this? We had two midfielders, I think, that we saw as maybe good partners for Bryam to kind of take him through the match. We obviously rate Distel Zola quite highly, and we've been asking for him to start. What did you make of that midfield composition?
Yeah, I mean, obviously I was happy for Distel to start. He had kind of a mixed bag, I think, in terms of the game. But as you say, I think it did make a lot of sense that you see the experience and just the tendency to drop or to sit back in front of the defense in Richie Ryan, and then someone mobile who can kind of support and maybe mop up around Brian in Distel. Bryam himself, it's funny because if you look at FOTMob, he's like man of the match, but I think actually he had another interesting performance in that there was a lot of really good things and then a lot of things that are just need to be improved on if you're going to be playing in midfield.
Sure.
He puts his body on the line as he always does for the club and for the go-ahead goal and the winner. So definitely an interesting midfield composition. Nick Ross obviously not there again, which I'm sure we'll get onto, but yeah, the support that Mark kind of chose for Bryam made a lot of sense to me.
And to me, I think that what I think is the deal with that lineup is that I think that Mark thinks very highly of Maka and that he's too good to leave him on the bench. And so I think ideally if Nick is healthy, that Nick might be on there as opposed to Bryam, or at least he's not starting Bryam 2 weeks in a row at midfield right now. But I think this was a matter of just putting the best 11 on the field. I think that Mark thinks that Bryam can probably do a better job out there for an extended amount of time, 70 minutes, than maybe putting Chapa there or, having Yuma and Richie and Distel out there. I think he wants a little more going forward, which is why he probably puts Bryam there, even though that he might not be 100% suited to play there. But I think, like I said, it's just a matter of putting the best ones out there for the shape that he wanted to play in.
Yeah, I think you bring up a really interesting point because in my mind, playing Bryam in midfield is obviously a vote of confidence in Bryam's technical ability and his ability to play in that position. But I think it's almost equally a vote of confidence in Maka's ability to play right back. And I think we saw throughout this game, Maka can whip a cross in with the best of them. And not to take away anything from Bryam, because we obviously think very highly of Bryam Rebellon. We loved him at right back all last season. But the delivery from Maka is on a different level. And I think Mark wants to get the best of everybody. and wants to have his best players on the field, as you said. So I think you really hit on something big there, where it's almost as much of a vote of confidence in Maka to be a creative force from right back as it is in Bryam's ability to play in midfield. And so I think Bryam will continue to grow in that role. But I mean, Austin, we kind of talked about it throughout the game, like in our group chat, but Bryam has this almost like a vibe where he's very energetic. He's all over the place. Like in terms of covering ground, I didn't see a heat map or anything like that, but it seems like he's everywhere. But he just has to be like a little bit sharper to play in our system, in our midfield. Is that kind of the vibe you get from Bryam, that he just has to kind of sharpen up a little bit?
Yeah, I think if once he starts working a little bit more on the ball and touches that up really quick, he'll do a lot better. Actually did pull up the heat map really quick. Yeah, he kind of stayed just he really was kind of everywhere. Watch. I'll share it with you guys really quick, but yeah, he was just kind of everywhere, and I think once he cleans up his footwork, he'll do a lot better, honestly.
He ends the match with just 66% pass completion. I mean, we know that is obviously not the level that that Mark expects of midfielders. And so that is one area where he'll definitely have to improve, but we know that he plays a very physical style and he draws a lot of fouls. So he did well in that sense, keeping possession, and everything. But, despite all of that in midfield and despite the delivery from out wide, still, especially in the first half, issues in front of goal, for Locomotive. And it wasn't so much down to, against Colorado Springs in the last match, there was issues just creating chances in general. We weren't really creating any opportunities. In this one, it felt like we were creating plenty of opportunities and we just weren't taking them. A couple of big opportunities, from Omar. Josue, a little bit wasteful, although we talked about that. We like to see confident Gomez, but he wastes his chances. Is this just one of those games, or is there something that was going on for you guys? And I mean, Mika, I can throw this one to you. Do you think it was something that was going on in the front three or the front two, I guess, but really including Mahrez in that? Is it something that was going on, or do you think it was simply just one of those games where, the shots just weren't hitting the target?
Yeah, you made an interesting point there about how we were creating a lot. I think also a lot was being created for us. I mean, Slayton in net for Real Monarchs, he put in a really interesting performance. I mean, I keep thinking back to that chance in the 41st minute where he totally gets it wrong coming off his line, and Omar does round him.
Yeah. And
then the shot is just totally under hit. So I'm going to just say it was one of those games. I think with Omar, we can expect that kind of thing from, not to be harsh, but it is what it is. So yeah, it's just one of those things that is just frustrating. I don't think that there was anything necessarily wrong systemically, like in the team or in the shape. I do like to see Josue shooting more. I think he has to, just because we don't find ourselves, taking too many shots, although it's improved a lot this season from the numbers last year. I don't know are you going to do any kind of like XG analysis, Phil? Because I think I liked seeing all the shots being taken, but I'm almost certain they were from low XG positions. So yeah, just eyeballing like even the decent chances and the saves that we forced. They're probably, I would say that we're probably in the like 2 XG range, because I mean we do take 22 shots in the end. Yeah.
Like we take a high volume of shots, but I wouldn't venture that any of them are more than I mean, gosh, even Coleman's is probably the biggest chance. And because it's a header, it's still probably only like 30%. So like it's an interesting one from XG because it's a high volume, but yeah, probably low quality. Just not, or at least not the quality that we've sometimes produced where, you know, it's essentially easier to miss than score. But we didn't really have a chance like that in this game.
We weren't necessarily walking it in on this one. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I think we've talked about shot volume in the past. And I mean, Christian, obviously Gomez shooting more in this. It's something we've talked about and having the confidence to have a go. There's an interesting couple of moments in the second half where Josue shoots from a fairly narrow angle and gets a little bit of a scolding from Omar a couple of times I noticed in this one. Do you think there's a dynamic there, or do you think it's just kind of in the vein of like the tension, quote unquote, that was there at Liverpool last year where like Mane was yelling at Salah for not passing him the ball or whatever? Mm-hmm. Do you think it's just along those lines of it's just competitive forwards who want to score? Or do you think there's like any genuine feeling of like, what are you doing shooting from there?
No, I didn't notice that during the game. I must have missed all that, but I mean, it better not be genuine. I mean, like, who the hell is Omar to have that kind of talk with Gomez? Like that's the last person that should be having that sort of conversation with anyone on the team. No, I mean, I think I don't think there's any sort of like real tension there. I think it's just competitive people who are wanting to do whatever it takes to win. And like I said, we've definitely seen players take worse shots than Gomez's, even though they were going to be amazing goals had they gone in. We've definitely seen players take worse shots. So I stand by that. I have no complaints about the shots he was taking.
The opener comes from a defender of all people throughout all of the shot volumes. And I mean, Austin, we've talked about set piece goals basically from day one of this podcast, and talking about creating chances off of set pieces. This particular goal felt so different from every set piece goal we've scored, and really from any goal we scored, in that Coleman makes a run and finds himself completely unmarked. And at that point, it's just a matter of him directing the header, on target. Do you think that this is a little bit of an evolution for Locomotive in terms of being more dangerous from set pieces because we've been begging for it for so long?
I hope so. I mean, I had to watch that goal multiple times to make sure we were watching Locomotive. But you think about it, how many times do we have a cross or, a corner come into the box and they can't even header it towards the goal or get a shot on goal,
Sure.
And I think that just shows a lot with Coleman coming over from Minnesota, even on loan. Like, just that difference of quality and being able to actually get it in there. And, I don't know if he just made some sort of movement to come unmarked or if Monarchs just had a bad play on their end. But, again, I had to watch that multiple times to make sure I was watching the right game. But, I mean, hopefully it's an evolution. We start seeing more of those, though.
There was a couple of comments in the post-match from Coleman and Mark talking about set piece goals or set piece routines, I guess we should say. And the fact that this is something that they have been working on, the timing and the spacing. Do you think it kind of struck me as strange because it seems like something they would have been working on up to this point? Do you think Coleman has maybe brought some like fresh ideas in terms of what he's seen at maybe Minnesota United or elsewhere, like what they've used in the past? Like maybe he's brought some kind of different routine.
I would think so. Yeah. And I mean, also just to, piggyback on that is Dylan Mars gets the assist on this one, and I think that was also like the missing piece last season is an actual set piece dead ball specialist. And I feel like Dylan actually didn't, to me anyway, didn't have that influential of a performance, but the fact that he can deliver a ball like that just shows why he's so quality and why he's so essential to the team because, you know, if you're not creating out an open play, you can still put something away, from a dead ball. So I guess Brent is kind of like the completion of that, of our set piece kind of abilities as someone who can actually put those chances away when it's not Dylan taking it himself, from like a direct free kick or what have you. So, yeah, I mean, I'm sure they, with MLS, they have more resources. They might actually employ set piece coaches who can go through that kind of thing. So, yeah, I'd be interested to know if he's actually kind of bringing down some information from that level for set pieces. But yeah, big ups to Dylan too for taking part in this one.
Yeah, it's a hell of a ball in, and I mean, it would have been easy, I think, for anyone in that sequence to, like, yes, Brent is unmarked at the far post, and yes, like it seems very straightforward that he directs the header, straight into the area that the keeper vacates. But I think
Austin, you showed us like a screenshot of the keeper, and he looks like.
Oh no, that was for the Bryam goal.
Was it? Well, yeah. I looked back, and it looks like both times he's
just out of
completely leaving the far side open, and it's just like. Not good enough, but I mean, we'll take it.
Yeah.
Good enough for me.
Well, and that's what, in both cases, it feels like something that we may not have capitalized on in the past, where like just because we had a big opportunity doesn't mean we take it. So I think the composure from Coleman is obviously great because I think there's almost a tendency for someone who's not normally in goal scoring situations, it could be very easy for that to kind of get to his head where like, eyes get really big. Oh my gosh, I'm about to score type thing. And then he heads it over the bar or something, I think it can be easy to get in your own head when it is a straightforward chance. So to have the composure and kind of have that mental fortitude to be able to just calmly guide that header into the far corner was very good, and it definitely something that we haven't necessarily seen. But from the goal, it's obviously Locomotive take that lead 1-0. They had come out of the gates in the second half absolutely all over Monarchs. I think in almost every department we were just absolutely like suffocating them. I think they barely got into our half the entire second interval, and then kind of from nothing, there's a poor giveaway on the left hand side. It's Chapa who had come into the match, and it's not really even necessarily his fault. It's just like he was the last one touching the ball. And all of a sudden, within a matter of seconds, Monarchs have equalized. And it felt, even for a late equalizer, it felt even more like a sucker punch because it was such an efficient goal. Is that what you guys kind of felt like, where all of a sudden it was 1-1 and it was like, wait, what just happened?
I mean, I didn't see the goal. Like, it was one of those things where like you're watching the game and then you're like, okay, like probably nothing will happen in the next 20 seconds. I'm going to like tie my shoe or something, and then you look up and they score. So yeah, it hurt in that regard. And that like, it just looked so easy for them.
Christian, to be fair, people in the stadium felt exactly the same. I mean, Kevin and I were sitting next to each other. He's like, wait, they scored? I was like, wait, what? Like, why are they celebrating? What happened? So I didn't get to see the goal until afterwards, actually. So don't feel too bad.
Yeah. I did the same thing as Christian. I turned my head away and then I was like, wait, what?
I mean, that's football, isn't it? Right. I'm noticing something, though, with this goal. I'm noticing kind of a trend, and maybe this is something that they'll go over in training or with the film. But it seems like when both of our fullbacks are pushed up and kind of like, in in midfield, that space, first of all, Foxy and it looks like Maka King don't have the pace to like get back and deal with that kind of thing. So I feel like if we're not in control of the ball and we're, the system breaks down in that area of the pitch, it's so easy to just counter us because there's so much space. You have Chiro stranded. And then Kyle Coffey just is able to like just make that direct run into the box, get between Brent Coleman and Fox and slot it home. It was a really good finish, by the way. I mean, fair play. It was really, really smooth. But I'm noticing that in a couple of chances and goals that we've conceded this season, and in the restart at least, is both the fullbacks have bombed on, and then there's if we give the ball away, it's really easy the system falls apart. And so something to keep an eye on. I mean, no system is free of these kind of, cons, or else everyone would play the same way. So,
right.
But I mean, it's just something that I've noticed, and something that hopefully the team can look at and see what they can do. Maybe a midfielder needs to just be kind of in that area or to prevent those counters, or we just need to not give the ball away. I mean, that would be nice, a little more concentration in the 82nd minute or whatever the hell that was. But yeah,
I think that's also what is kind of upsetting about the whole thing is obviously you notice and pointed out rightly the trend in it's not the first goal that we've given up from similar circumstances since the restart. But I think in fairness to Monarchs, it is like watching it back and without the emotion of the time. I was like, wow, that was actually it's a damn good goal. Like I have to give credit to him. It's almost galling in a way because it's so incisive and so quick of a counter. And it's not the type of goal that Locomotive often score, if ever, in terms of 3 passes, like completely cutting a team open from the midfield, from the center line all the way to the finish. There was maybe 3 passes and a pretty decent dummy in the box as well. So it was kind of upsetting for that reason because we completely outplayed Monarchs in kind of every facet of the game. But in that passage of play, they were just perfect. And it was kind of upsetting in kind of a more primal way, not associated with the result, not associated with how we played, just kind of upsetting that they could create something like that. So I think maybe ultimately it speaks to the fact that Monarchs are not necessarily playing as well as the sum of their parts. Like I think they have some very talented players, but they just aren't that good of a team. But I think in that moment they showed that they have a lot of quality in that side. It just hasn't really come out across 90 minutes yet this season.
Yeah. And it's easy to when you're on the road to just kind of like give up more or less that late and just kind of mitigate the damage. I mean, it's not like they were getting thrashed or anything like 3-0, but, it was a really good goal, and it caught everyone out. If it caught the team out, it caught the stadium out. Like it caught you guys out watching on TV. Like it was just a bang bang play. Really nothing that we could do about it in terms of defending it. Now preventing it, that's another question, as I kind of talked about earlier. But yeah,
right. But Locomotive, I mean, from the depths, what we talked about, this kind of familiar feeling of, oh my God, we're about to draw a game that we deserve to win. We've played well enough to win it pretty comfortably. We've created plenty of chances. And here we are, it's 1-1. It's inside the last 10 minutes. And I mean, Christian, that ball gets sliced by, I think it was actually Noah Powder who tries to play the ball, which one of Real Monarchs like better players, but sliced clearance. It falls kindly to Rebellon. He cuts inside, and despite the poor positioning of the keeper, maybe it's a really nice finish from Bryam with the left foot, especially given the fact that he takes a nice American football hit going across the middle as he finishes. But we haven't had, we've had a couple of moments like that in Locomotive's history. It's always nice to grab a late winner like that.
Definitely. I mean, I don't know if I want to say that's the best way to win, because sometimes I would just rather win like 6-0. I mean, I'd like to do that just once, but yeah, I mean, it's always exciting when it's like that. And, especially when you're us, there's still that inkling in your head of like, are we actually going to hold on to this? Like, so yeah, I mean, it was good that I'm very happy that it went in, and, happy was the go ahead. And, hopefully we have him back next week on Saturday.
Austin, I was reminded a little bit of, with the hacked clearance and a late goal, late winner, it kind of had Gomez Sac Republic vibes a little bit.
I was thinking the same thing. And honestly, what went through my head when it went in, I was like, I wonder how Phil would have called this. Like, we had another like breaking the Twitter sphere moment again.
I would have been like, rebellion.
Oh my God.
Yeah. I think it's so cool. And I think in some ways, and I know this isn't really like the narrative, because the narrative is like, we played really well, we deserve to win, we ultimately won, but it was a lot harder than it should have been. But in a lot of ways, like, the narrative is kind of, there were fans back in the stands, and they got to enjoy, like, those 800 people, like, in person, got to enjoy a pretty intense and like just a kind of outpouring of joy again, and something akin to, games at the end of last season. So in a lot of ways, I'm kind of thankful that they just got to celebrate, and that it wasn't this like dull, heartbreaking maybe draw. So the fact that Locomotive won was almost, to go back to the symbolism, I guess, like, it gave them back some kind of like happiness, which is why we play sports in the first place. So it was kind of this like intense feeling, if unnecessary, and maybe like looked down upon by, those who would dissect the performance. The emotion attached to it kind of added to the return of fans. And I don't know if that's how you guys kind of felt about it.
Absolutely. And it is kind of like a metaphor for what's going on in our world. Is like, we score this amazing late winner, and then the goal scorer gets like clocked in the head, and you're like, oh damn, this is serious again. Like,
we
luckily
can't have nice things.
Yeah. I mean, the stretcher did come out, but I mean, luckily Bryam was able to get up on his own accord, so that's good. But yeah, no, again, so hard to not celebrate when you're like, quote, working. But the fans were ecstatic. Obviously, it was a sellout for the capacity that they had, and I'm sure it's funny because I felt like the people that were there were like hardcore fans. Like, some of the banter in the stands was like, that's pretty high level. Like, you're not just saying like, you suck, goalie, or whatever. Like, there were a lot of like really like hardcore soccer fans there that night. And so, yeah, to get a win in front of, really dedicated fans in the situation that we find ourselves in is great. And I think I'm predicting another sellout, honestly, on Saturday. Because, El Paso likes to come out when we win. So.
Yeah. And we have seen that. Bryam, I think it's still maybe up in the air whether Bryam will be fit. But Mika, you were able to land a little bit of an injury scoop, which we know from this team is hard to come by. They do not. I mean, Mark plays it extremely close to the vest on injuries, but you were able to pry a little bit of info out.
Yes, I actually I spoke to Nick Ross after the game because obviously he didn't dress for this one again. He's been out, and we know that he's probably first name on the team sheet for Mark Lowry because he's just a fantastic midfielder. He really lets the team tick. I asked Nick, are you injured? What's going on? And he did indeed confirm that he's got a bit of a knee injury. And he will be having surgery, I think, maybe this week. And then after that, it's about a 3 to 4 week layoff. So Nick told me he's obviously really disappointed to not be playing. And as we can see from these past couple of fixtures, our midfield is quite different without him as far as, the control and the possession goes. So that's a big miss. But yeah, I had to ask the player himself to see what the hell was going on. So, but yeah,
now we're
that's
gonna
Nick.
start showing up at their houses and what's going on.
Well, I'm shocked a club representative didn't immediately come tackle him and like gag him and bind him so that he couldn't give up any info.
He was very straightforward with me. I was kind of not expecting him to answer. He was like, "Oh yeah, no, my knee," and I'm like, "Oh, okay." So little scoop.
Well, I look forward to the injury report for the next 3 to 4 weeks, not saying anything about Nick Ross. Pre-game, no injuries. Nick Ross just not playing. So that is obviously a big blow going into these games coming up. But in this one, with the players involved, I want to go around the horn. And Austin, we can start with you on this one. Who for you is the game changer? The one who we know that Bryam got the goal, but who for you had the best Locomotive performance on the night?
I mean, that's going to be a tough one, but I mean, you can always go reliable, and you can always go with Logan because he had a couple pretty damn good saves in this game, and I think a couple that could have been really tough. So, I mean, I'll give it to Logan on this one.
I think he's a little unlucky to not come away with the with the clean sheet. So yeah, that could have been more of a
even better pick.
Yeah. Well, and I just mean that he could have had even a better performance because he is, very unlucky to be put in the situation where he does concede. So, I mean, I think he's grown and I think we've all seen that Logan grows into or has grown to every occasion. And this season, especially, he just looks so confident. There were times last season where he was maybe hit or miss. But he just now he looks completely in command whenever he's out there. So I completely understand the shout for Logan. Christian, was there a Locomotive player that stood out to you in this one? Someone who changed the game for you?
I don't know about change the game. I think that I don't think that there was a big turning point in the game or anything, but I think that my favorite thing to see from this game was definitely King and how he's kind of bringing that element that we just haven't seen. So my brother has been watching the games a lot more now from home, so he's a little more casual, but even he noticed he was like, because he watched a couple games last year and he's watched all of them this season. He was like, I don't think I've ever seen anyone on our team cross the ball like that. And I was like, Yeah, it hasn't happened. So I think that was probably the most impressive performance. And even us in the chat, not just putting balls into the box, but switching the play at the right time and just seeing it every time so perfectly. I'm very impressed with him. And I'm excited about what that's going to do for the team for the rest of the year and, going forward.
That's a great shout. And as you said, he just seems to have such a good eye for what's going on, kind of sees the whole field. And certainly, our forwards, I would say, don't aren't suited the best for floated crosses, that just kind of are hit aimlessly into the box. the way that he gets that kind of like whip and shape on the ball, I think it's going to eventually lead to goals. It's just obviously he was a little unlucky to not provide anything in this one, but yeah, I think he showed exactly why Mark took a shot on bringing in a right back when it seemed like we were pretty settled at that position. He's brought in a guy who adds a completely different dimension, I think, to what Bryam offered in that spot.
Yeah, and to add to that too, I know like even us, like when they're announcing these signings, when they bring Coleman, when they bring King, we're kind of like shitting on it, like what the hell?
I was just gonna say, how about the fact that we took the piss out of all those signings? Yeah. Both goal scorers are defenders.
Yeah. And those are easily for me the two, I guess, and maybe it's just because they're new and there's a novelty to it, but that I've been most impressed with. Like,
sure,
they haven't come on and I haven't said, like, why do we have these guys? Like they've immediately proven their worth. And so I think that's impressive. I think even with our really good players that we've brought on, our signings, like when we had Jerome, when we had Velasquez, we know that they're quality players, but even them, like neither of them had that immediate impact that these guys have had, and
sure,
we don't see them and say, wow, like I'm so impressed with these guys. So they've already proven their worth. So, I get like, maybe we should just shut up and leave Mark alone when he does stuff.
And also, maybe we should just keep shopping at Indy 11.
Yeah, yeah, for real. That is kind of crazy that 2 Indy 11 cast-offs are 2 of our best players. Like, I mean, because what's that say about the rest of Indy 11's team? Like, they must be as good as advertised, because their third string right back could easily be like one of the better players in USL, which is insane.
Yeah, that is crazy. I mean, they told me, they're like, oh, he's surplus. I'm like, okay, but I think my game changer too would probably be King. I think he'll get even better as he and Bryam start to understand each other and kind of their movements. I think a lot of their interplay and like their interchanging of positions is by design.
Sure.
But when we're getting countered, that needs to probably improve as to who's gonna deal with those situations. But
sure.
Yeah, from when you're standing level with the field, you can really see the way the whip that Maka gets on those balls is insane. Like I think the only person who comes close to that in our short history is maybe James Kiffey, and he was a playmaker from that fullback position, so maybe Maka can be that for us. But he's very impressive. And yeah, we man, how many times was I like, another defender?
Yeah.
Now like I look like an asshole.
Seriously, Loco in the mud. Yeah.
Once again.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting because I think, speaking about the fullbacks, I think you talking about the understanding between Maka and Bryam, I think a similar understanding exists between Foxy and Nick Ross. And I think with someone else in there, you can tell that it's slightly more awkward than what it is when it's Fox and Ross next to each other. So with Zola in there were certainly like the glimpses of a partnership, but not necessarily as fluid. So I think you'll start to see something similar develop on the other side. And yeah, I have to give a shout out to our other new signing, Brent Coleman, just because he's a really good center back. He's really good on the ball. He deals with pretty much everything that comes around him. And it's just, I think it's pretty obvious, and I'm not taking away from any of our other players, but I think it's pretty obvious that he did play at a higher level and is kind of used to that level. And so he's bringing a little bit more, maybe refinement, a little more, like just reading the game and being able to use your positioning to your advantage. Chiro, I think, is very good at that as well. So in this game in particular, we didn't see any really heinous, like crazy central defender faux pas, as we've seen in the past, where people are getting caught out of position or anything. So I think you start to see that influence. So just have to give a shout out to Brent, because he's been very good since he came in, and he gets a goal in this one. So yeah, he has kind of the perfect center back performance, I guess, in many ways, minus the clean sheet. But the last bit of business from this game is the Shithouse 11, and we've been struggling a little bit, I think, this season with the Shithouse 11. I don't know if it's the return to play. I don't know if it's like just the vibe of these matches. No fans. Maybe like people aren't feeding off the atmosphere as much. But was there anyone from Monarchs that stood out to you guys as that the Shithouse from this game? Do we have anyone for the Shithouse 11?
I
don't know.
So I watched 2 soccer games. So I watched the Locomotive game, and I watched the Juarez game, and I can't remember which game this happened in. I think it happened in the Locomotive game. They're kind of blending together for me, honestly. But who was it? Someone took somebody out.
Oh, Jack Blake.
They were not happy with the ref for calling the foul.
Oh.
It wasn't Blake. I don't know if it was Taylor P. or
where he completely like just flies in and then is complaining about the fact that the foul was given. Yeah.
Yes, I can't.
I'm remembering
this
moment, but I can't remember.
Yeah.
Who was the perpetrator?
And I can't see on Fatma who got carded for whatever reason. Because I think they got carded. Maybe
Jack Blake got carded as a matter of course.
Powder.
Yeah. Yeah, him and Powder had kind of rough challenges, I feel like, in this one in particular.
But I guess if I can't remember him, then I can't really submit him for nomination. So yeah, it's been a rough recruiting season for the Shithouse 11, I must say.
We too are suffering from the effects of the pandemic in our
For real.
building.
We are, and I think I can't help but feel like it has to do with the fact that there's not the same like energy around these games. Not that the players aren't giving their all, because certainly they are. And we've even seen some pretty shithousey moments. I mean, primarily from New Mexico, but
I was about to say that's a good thing. If we need more people, we're playing New Mexico now.
Yeah, we're about to have to nominate all 11, primarily from these games. But yeah, it's been a challenge picking the Shithouse 11.
I think what's interesting is that we thought towards the beginning that there would be a lot of this because we're playing these teams so much that there might be a lot of that like mini rivalries just out of like necessity.
Sure.
But I don't feel like we've seen too much of that. I think we've only played everyone twice, which is like the normal amount.
Sure.
But now that we're kind of going on the other side of the schedule now and going for the second 2 legs with everyone, maybe that'll change. Well,
that leaves us in with El Paso Locomotive having played 9 matches. Group C. The Group C update, New Mexico United still top, but just 5 points ahead after their draw 1-1 with Colorado Springs, and El Paso sitting second on 15 points with a game in hand. So in theory, a win on Saturday would bring us within 2 points with a game in hand. So certainly top spot within grasp, and within Locomotive's hands at this point. Colorado Springs sitting third on 7 points, and Real Monarchs trailing behind with just 4 points on the season. Locomotive making sure they don't gain any in this one with the late Rebellon winner. We are going to go to a quick break, and after break, we are going to talk about El Paso's first run-in with the coronavirus in this return to play, and we are going to get to listener questions. So stick around, and we will be right back. Welcome back, everyone. And we're going to dive right in right now. I mean, the news that hit just a couple of days ago, Locomotive, in conjunction with Colorado Springs Switchbacks, they were scheduled to play on Wednesday night, and they made the announcement that a member of Colorado Springs Switchbacks, whether it was a player, staff, we're not sure, but part of their protected group, tested positive for COVID-19, and the match was postponed. As a result, obviously this was a pretty intense period this week in Locomotive's schedule. We've seen kind of the every weekend games. We had a midweek game. Now it's canceled. And due to COVID-19, is this a little bit of a down to earth moment, I guess, in some ways of, we're thinking like fans are back in the stands and everything's kind of returning to some kind of normalcy. Is this the now equivalent of this is why we can't have nice things? Like we are brought back to the fact that COVID-19 is still very much a thing, and it's not over just because we want to return to normalcy.
Yeah, so unfortunate. I hope whoever that was either is asymptomatic, or if they are showing symptoms, that they get well soon. As you said, one of their covered persons per the USL return to play protocols, so that could mean any number of people. As far as we understand, I think, though, there was no direct exposure that we know of to anyone in the Locomotive organization, and everyone has been testing negative, which is nice. The good thing, though, I guess, is that because there's so much testing going on, they're able to isolate that person pretty quickly away from others. So, I mean, cases are going to continue to crop up. I mean, that's what viruses do, So, so we just have to kind of, deal with that as it comes. Without wanting to sound harsh to that individual, I think probably Locomotive might be a little bit happy they're not having to make that trip back up to Colorado Springs so quickly, and get a little bit more rest and some time here at home in El Paso, especially, with the fixture that's coming up. So yeah, I mean, it's after such a triumphant return to the swap, that definitely did bring us back to reality a little bit there. So,
I mean, is there any concern from you guys? I mean, we spoke, you just brought it up, Mika, like the fact that there's almost constant testing. There is all sorts of protocols in place from USL to try to control these sorts of infections and all of that. But is there any concern that Locomotive just played Switchbacks and, are we now in the incubation period of Locomotive, or is it one of those things where, the exposure would be so happenstance, I guess, at this point, even if it was a player, it would be pretty long odds for a Locomotive player to get infected during a game, it seems like.
I think that I'll start with saying I'm not that concerned about it. I think that we've heard I forget, towards the beginning of the season, there was another team who they found out that someone had been in contact or actually had the virus themselves. Maybe it was RGV. I don't remember. Mm-hmm. But they were very upfront about it was a player who was on the bench the whole time. So I think that if there was any danger of it, someone that the players had been in contact with, that they would have canceled our games too. Right. So I'm not that worried about it. They do seem to be doing a very good job at protecting the players and the employees. So I'm not that concerned about it as far as the team goes.
That's what I mean. Ultimately, it does seem like, for all the crazy kind of criticism and everything around the way that USL restarted, for all intents and purposes, I think Los Dos being the one kind of outlier at the beginning of the season, USL's done a pretty good job, it seems, in keeping things under control, being responsible when a team does experience an infection, and then being able to continue play without any major like adverse effects. So, I mean, credit kind of has to be given to the league, I think, for how they've gone about this.
Yeah, I mean, it really does. It seems like not many cases or big outbreaks within teams have come out since the return to play, and they're pretty responsible about it. They're not like, let's play it by ear the moment they find out. Like, I mean, like here with this Colorado situation, a player didn't even, necessarily test positive, but they came forward and, said that they came in contact with somebody who had it. So, to me, it seems like the league is being very responsible and very quick with what they need to do. So, I mean, it definitely is comforting,
Yeah. No, and I think it's kind of natural for there to be criticism of leagues. I think in American sports in general, we just kind of hate the leagues, like by default. The NHL famously boos the commissioner whenever he presents the Stanley Cup. So that's kind of just like, I think it's kind of ingrained to like these leagues have to be wrong or making just like purely kind of cutthroat business decisions. But in this case, like I do think credit has to be given to USL for how they've handled this and the way they've gone about it, because many people were critical of the fact that they were not doing a bubble model and not doing a hub model, whatever you want to call it. And they were playing in home markets, and some teams were allowing fans based on state, regulations. And there was a lot of concern around that. But ultimately, like the way things have gone down, it hasn't been a crazy adverse thing. You haven't seen a widespread infection aside from that early, incident with Los Dos. So I think in the end, you just have to give credit for them because they've ultimately done what they set out to do.
Yeah, and I think that obviously in retrospect, we can see that the bubble is not necessarily like the best situation. I mean, MLS's bubble is I think you were saying, Phil, that I think FC Dallas, they left Dallas no infections and arrived at the bubble with a bunch of them. So, yeah. I mean,
and two teams ended up having to leave the bubble due to COVID. Yeah. So, I mean, no teams in USL have stopped playing. That's
right.
I mean,
and that's the thing too with the way that USL has gone about it, which maybe it's a bit of a masterstroke by them, is that when a team does have someone test positive, there's no traveling in or out anywhere. They just stay home. Right. We didn't even have to go up to Colorado to find this out because the testing is so routine and they're doing it constantly and reporting that. So yeah, I mean, credit to the league. I do understand some people's criticisms of, them returning, but as we know at this level in American soccer, the gate revenue is extremely important and what little they get from the ESPN deal. So if we wanted to see our league survive, like we had to, have it come back in some form, I think. And I think that goes, for even leagues below us, of course, as well. So, obviously League One didn't return, but yeah, I mean, I think it just shows that this can be done. I mean, I'm not advocating to be clear. I'm not advocating to like pretend that coronavirus doesn't exist, because that's totally not on.
Sure.
But I think we can, go forward with things and just take the right precautions,
Absolutely. And we will talk a little bit more in a little bit about Locomotive's advanced steps in this return to play. But for now, we did get some listener questions, and I want to dive into those. The first of which is an interesting one from Jake Konecki, and I know Christian and Austin. But Christian, I'll throw this to you first. Jake's question is Is Caijo or Carijo coming in during stoppage time for the past two matches a fitness issue? Seemed like pointless subs. What do you think about Mark's handling of Caijo and his introduction into the team? Do you think it's been based on his fitness, or do you think it's just simply Mark has stuck with his attackers in these games?
Well, like I said before the break, I don't think I'll ever question Mark again, I guess. But no, I said a couple of weeks ago that I don't think that he's here to be a starter. I don't think that that's the case. Now, would I like to see him on for more than 2 minutes in stoppage time? Absolutely. But I think that it's just a matter of working him in, and just a matter of how the game is going. I think that, 70 minutes in, we were up 1-0 and felt like, we had the game in hand. So I don't think Mark felt the need to make a change to the attack. If anything, he was saving that sub for, to bring on a sub for a fullback, or, to give Richie some rest, that kind of thing. So I don't question that. I always question, you see this in soccer a lot, like the 91st minute sub, and yeah, it's a waste time and stuff. I get it. But just the choice seems kind of strange, I guess. And maybe it's just because we're fans. Maybe to Mark, it really makes no difference who he puts on. I don't know. But as fans who want to see Leandro on the field for an extended amount of time, it feels almost like a slight. So I think that it's just a matter of time before he gets some significant minutes. And it's going to be a matter of context in the game. Because like I said, I think he's here to be a really good utility player, but a utility player nonetheless.
And I think, too, watching, and I mean, we've obviously praised Maka for his crossing ability in this episode. There were a few times where I was like, I would love to see Leandro in the box to be on the end of one of these, because I think he could feast off of some of the service that Maka was providing, and so. I don't think he's here to be a starter. I think we will often see Gomez and Omar especially start up top because of what they offer out of possession. Like in many ways, like Gomez, obviously a great goal scorer for us. Omar does a lot in terms of creation, chance creation, assisting goals. Maybe one day he will score a bunch. But Leandro is like kind of specifically, I don't know that he would be a great like counter presser, especially like, I mean, he's obviously, I don't want to say he's old, but he is getting up there. He's probably lost a step or two over the years. Yeah. Season. But like,
there it is, season.
Yeah. But I'm just like, I think he could be great. I want to see him come in like this with like half an hour to make an impact, or 25 minutes, somewhere in there, because I do think especially in cases where we need a goal, and maybe we would have seen that, as you said, Christian, like maybe we would have seen that if it was still 0-0 with 20 minutes to go. Like, maybe we would have seen him introduced sooner. I'm curious to see, especially with the service that we've seen, or even, with the skill in midfield that we've seen in terms of the link up play and being able to thread passes through. It just seems like, I'd love to see what it looks like with Leandro on the end of those moves. And I don't know how you guys feel about that, but maybe it's almost fantasy football at this point, because I'm thinking of like peak, like Ascenso Leandro instead of like current Leandro. But I don't know. It just seems like with his quality, he could kind of I think he could go absolutely crazy with some of the service that we're providing this year, but maybe he doesn't have the legs to do it over 90 minutes.
Yeah, and I also it's the other thing to think about is how we know that he's like eligible to play now, so it's kind of interesting how in the first two games Mark has strayed away from his usual tendency of just throwing him in there. So that's been kind of strange, but it also like we keep saying, it might be a matter of, he's not a 90-minute player. So
right.
As opposed to everyone else that we've brought in have been these younger guys who are expected to run for us.
Sure.
So yeah, it's just been, he is unique as far as players that we've brought in before. So it's just being handled a little differently than maybe we're used to.
The next question comes from Eighth Notch Central Texas, our remote chapter of Eighth Notch. And they just asked, and this is something we kind of touched around, but maybe we can address this a little more directly. Is Rebellon more effective for the team as a right back or a midfielder? I don't know if it's just nostalgia or hesitation to change, but I liked him better as a defender with attacking abilities. I mean, Mika, we touched on this and kind of his need to sharpen up, but is there going to be a tendency of fans to look at his time at right back and kind of question why he's being moved?
Yeah, I think that's natural. I mean, I said as much in the first instance that we saw him play away at Colorado in midfield. The more I see of Maka King, though, the more I think that informs what Bryam's future is in this squad. I think having spoken to Nick Ross and knowing that his selection or lack thereof is because of injury, it really puts that into perspective for me to maybe think that Bryam's inclusion in midfield is not as experimental as we may think. It may be a little bit of necessity there, and having to manage the minutes of other players. With that being said, though, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if we do see him back at right back sometimes as well, though, because Maka can't play every game. I say that, and he probably will because he's been playing really well. But no, yeah, I don't blame Eighth Notch Central Texas for being a little bit jarred by the change, because it is different. Bryam's had, kind of a mixed bag. That, he's never short of effort. I'll give him that. But it's interesting because he's a very progressive passer. It's just not always accurate. Right. He's always looking forward, and I love that. I love that for him in midfield, but just needs to work a little bit more on that sharpness, I think. So, yeah, I don't blame them for questioning it, but I think Mark knows what he's doing. Yeah.
Well, and it all goes back to Christians. We've learned better, I guess, than to question Mark at this point. We'll continue to do it though, because that's part of what we do. So,
also the other thing is, how dare these people question Bryam's ability? Because he did make Team of the Week. So
we didn't even give a shout out. Okay, yeah. And I do want to sum up why we didn't mention. So his inclusion in Team of the Week, justified in terms of he scored a very decisive goal. And there were a couple of times throughout the match where I was like, oh, okay. Midfield Bryam, I can see what's going on here. There was a run he made in the first half where I was like, he might just take over this match. He might just become straight up Kaká, vintage Kaká, dribbling through everybody, just not able to be taken off the ball. But it's all down to in a Lowry side, if your passing is not accurate as a midfielder, it's just not going to be like up to the standard that obviously anyone expects. And in Bryam's case, like when you're a fullback, you don't have to complete 80% of your passes, because most of your passes are, as you said, Mika, like you're playing progressive passes, you're playing like riskier passes, you're crossing a lot. But when you're playing in that position in midfield for Mark's side, like that's not really what's being at. Like he wasn't playing anything too crazy. He wasn't playing a bunch of through balls that like didn't work out. The passing just like wasn't particularly good, and it's not a knock against him. It's just something that he needs to work on. But I can certainly see like the qualities there. So we will see how it works out for Bryam and company. But in the meantime, we'll wait and see each week where Bryam lines up. But I think as you said, with the emergence of Macca King, I think we're more likely to see Bryam in midfield than at right back at the moment. And maybe that's just the recency bias talking, but I mean, Mark loves his English fullbacks, so maybe he'll stick with them. And on that note, we did get one comment from Chris at some guy Chris. He just said, "Not a question, but I'm officially a Macca King stan." So we've got the Macca stans already established after a couple of games. So
fair. I mean, he's earned it.
We got that trademark application put in, Mika.
Yeah. The Macca militia. I'm telling
we're gonna have to fight though. I mean, if that happens,
have a duel.
Meet you at the Verdansk Stadium.
Yeah.
In the gulag.
1v1 in the gulag. Oh man. So we also had a question from Nate. And he asked, what is our ideal lineup now? Zola over Yuma, Kallman over Jerome. So a couple of mainstays. I mean, Austin, are these moves that you see kind of staying put? Do you think these are just rotations by Mark? What do you think in terms of our ideal starting lineup? Have these new guys supplanted like the mainstays?
I don't know if mainstays, but definitely like more in Mark's eyes, because like Christian said, you can't even question Mark anymore, what he's gonna do. And it seems like we think we got him down to what he's gonna do, and then he just switches it all up on us. So if anything, maybe just more heavy into the rotation.
I don't know how you guys feel. I don't know that Zola is back in favor fully at the moment. I think he got, like, I'm really glad he started, and I think it probably helped his confidence a little bit to get out there and actually like get on the ball and just like play and to start and stay in there for a significant amount of time. But I don't necessarily know if Mark trusts him in a midfield where he has his whole first choice. All his first choice midfielders are, I mean, just like from I guess these last few games, it seems his first choice midfield in theory would be Nick, Bryam, and Richie at the moment. Although we've seen him go with different compositions. But yeah, right now I think if he had everyone available, it would be those three. I don't know how you guys feel, but I feel like Distel is like slightly on the outside of Mark's like first choice midfield.
Yeah, I think if we're playing the diamond, because I mean, I think we don't consider Dylan Mars part of the midfield. He's kind of advanced.
Yeah.
But that midfield three, I think Distel is probably like fifth choice, maybe. Because I think maybe Yuma and Bryam at this point can probably interchange, but if Nick's healthy, he starts.
Yeah.
if Richie's minutes aren't looking too bad, he starts. So yeah, I agree with you. I don't know that Distel is necessarily in favor right now. It's just a rotation, and what a rotation option to have, honestly. I mean, we've got depth, which is crazy because the squad's come a long way.
Right. Yeah, we would have been playing we would have been playing Forta in midfield this time last season, with any injuries. But and then Kallman is an interesting one because I think we spoke about it. Just his level seems to be a little bit higher than our two main center backs. And again, I don't mean that as a slight against the players we have, because I really do enjoy the way that Chiro plays positionally. And then Mishak obviously brings a lot of kind of physicality and a little bit of wildness to center back. But Drew is, I mean, it's just 2 games. Is it? I don't know. Is Brent I said Drew, a little bit of a Freudian slip. But Brent, is he just a step above? Is he now a first choice center back for you?
And I think so. I mean, he's, like you said, it is just 2 games, but I mean, with the season that Mishak's been having, I think it's an easy choice so far. I don't see everything that's going on in training, obviously, but if what we see on the field looks like what we see at training, then it's not even a dilemma. It's Brent over Mishak every time.
Yeah, and I mean, Mishak's a full international. I mean, he is a good player. He was in the Gold Cup, and he's a very important part of that Haiti side, actually. With Brent, I feel like if you're moving down a level in terms of, can we even call it a pyramid? I'll call it a pyramid for this sake. But if you're moving down a USL Championship from MLS, I'd like to think that's because there's an understanding that you will start between the understanding being between the 2 clubs and the player, of course. I doubt he would have accepted a move down to El Paso without some kind of assurances in that regard. But from the small sample size we have seen, it does seem like Brent just has that little extra bit of experience and quality playing against better attackers. Because, theoretically, Brent would be going up against the Carlos Velas and the Ibrahimoviches of the world in MLS. So yeah, I mean, there's a significant step up in that regard. So yeah, he's good on the ball. I mean, that's a requirement to play in a Mark Lowry side. So good on the ball. And then he gave us that dimension that we've never seen before, which is just this towering header and not even there's technique to that finish, right? Because it's across the keeper, you're aiming for that open far side. So yeah, I mean, I think so. I think he's more so than Distel. I think he's actually the one who's very much in favor and probably should stay in that position. He's not done nothing to warrant being dropped.
We spent a lot of time last week talking about, well, I say a lot. I went on a rant about Colorado Springs broadcast team. So I have to keep things honest. I gotta call it like it is. And Michael Balagan, one of the broadcasters for Locomotive, our color commentator, there was a very funny moment for me in this match where Brent dribbled into midfield with the ball, and Michael kind of called him out for it and saying well, I guess he's kind of getting used to Lowry, our Lowry side. I don't know if Mark will really appreciate him dribbling out of position and potentially messing up the kind of the shape of the team, and not. Literally as he was saying this, Chiro dribbles far into opposition territory, and it just made me laugh because it's one of those things where it's he's I guess he's just getting used to the system, and then the captain of the team is storming down the middle of the field with the ball. So I just laughed at that because obviously any commentator is is like just trying to offer their best view, and then immediately, the most experienced player on the field is dribbling past people in midfield. So that one made me laugh a little bit.
That's not like something that Chiro doesn't do, though. I mean, he does that pretty regularly, where he'll try to get the striker to commit and then get rid of the ball.
Right.
So yeah.
Well, and I think you see it from many teams that have or that play against high pressing sides or anything like that. You see these like talented ball playing center backs who like will break a line of the press with a simple dribble, like nothing crazy. They're not Neymar back there, but they just carry it forward like a little bit, and it takes a couple players out of the equation.
Yep.
The last question will bring us into our last break and into our last segment, but Patrick asks, is there a chance we could do a number on New Mexico United this week, or are there still some questions that need answering? This abbreviated season is flying by fast, and there honestly isn't enough time for drawn out chopping and changing. What do you guys think? Just very initial thoughts. Do you think Locomotive can get a result against New Mexico United? The result that we've all craved, a win over our black and gold neighbors to the north.
Without saying too much, because I know we're going to talk about it later, I think it just comes down to, can we score? We need to score more than one goal. So like we've always said, like since the beginning of last year, like they're a very beatable team if you can score. And well, I'm going to stop there. I'll save it for the next time. I'm going to stop right there.
Yeah, real quick. I think there's always a chance, but I just want to correct you there a little bit, Phil. They're not our black and gold neighbors. They're our black and gold tenants. This is an away fixture.
Of the month.
It is the first of the month.
It is the first of the month.
Yep.
Rent is due.
Yep. And
that though.
Yeah.
Little Bone Thugs and Harmony for you all there.
And
that should have been our intro music.
Oh man, that's a good shout. We'll keep that in mind for especially
Outro,
if we
question mark?
especially if we get a win. There's a lot of room for that. Also, rent being due for the space that we're living rent free, despite the fact that they're top of the table. We get plenty of interaction there. But Austin, you had a thought before we go to our break.
No, yeah. I mean, it's like we said, without giving too much away. I feel like it's that time. New Mexico's kind of hitting that slump. So.
Well, after the break, we will preview the United match. We'll have our score predictions and close this one out. So stay tuned, and we will be right back. Welcome back to Seriously Loco, and we are getting into our preview of the New Mexico United match this weekend. First things first, Locomotive announcing that an increase to the amount of fans allowed at Southwest University Park. 1,500 fans going to be allowed for this one. It is obviously, we're nearly doubling the capacity, but for you guys, how do you feel about this quick of an increase? We praised obviously USL. We've praised Locomotive for their thoughtfulness behind this. Does that stay in place with this quick increase in capacity?
I think for me, it's hard to say. I was gonna ask Mika, like, what did it look like with 800 people there? I think that kind of matters too. Without actually seeing it, I'm still not sure what 800 people in that stadium looks like.
Yeah, don't quote me on this, but I think there was 4 rows of space between each line of people, and then of course people were sitting with their own party, I guess. plenty spread out, to be honest. 800 people is easy to spread out there. Hand sanitizer stations were everywhere. Not every concession was open. And then, of course, they had the dismissal. the club were kind of doing like the bell doesn't dismiss you, I do kind of thing. So sections were being let go like one by one. But 1,500 fans is doubling that amount. Now the capacity of the SWEP is like what, 12K? So
like 11, I think. Yeah,
something
75.
like.
But I think it's with standing room. It's
about that.
It's that. But
the standing room. Yeah, the standing room is closed.
Seated.
So
seated. I think it's only about. It's literally like 8,000 or a little shy of 8,000.
Yeah. So I mean, it might seem a little bit more cramped then, but I mean, I guess we see how it goes. I know that this has been a plan from the club that's like 6 months in the making. So, and I know they've been consulting local health authorities and some doctor. I forget what her name was, but there was a physician that kind of came out and acknowledged to the press that this is kind of an experiment to see how it goes. So, we'll see.
I think what's encouraging for me, despite the fact that obviously I'm at a distance right now, literally from the club. I think what's encouraging was the behavior of fans at this initial game, because obviously it's been kind of low hanging fruit on social media to point out like when Louisville like first let fans back, or OKC Energy or whoever, Tulsa, when they had fans, it was easy to point at like, look at these people not wearing masks. So we didn't really have that, which I think was good. We had like a solid return. I just think it's going to take diligence on the club's part to keep enforcing things, and hopefully it stays safe for everybody, and it's not anything that leads to any sort of unsavory, I guess, attention on the club and on the city, because I think for the most part in the last game everything was pretty much adhered to, so I want to just see that continue. But against New Mexico United, as we transition to talking about the actual play on the field, this game, we've now played them. This will be the third game against them since the return to play, and it doesn't, for me anyways, it doesn't get any easier to play this team. Like, I hate this fixture.
I hate this picture. That's literally what I was going to say.
I hate it so much. And obviously we haven't gotten a win over them yet. It's still kind of a cloud hanging over the team in some ways. What do you guys make of this particular addition? And how much do you think it affects the team that we haven't beat them yet?
I think it's probably something that they're conscious of. I think that maybe like, I guess it's a good time for us right now. We're coming off of a draw and 2 wins, so we're in pretty good form right now, I would say. I think for New Mexico, they're coming off a draw that I think is very disappointing for them. A 1-1 draw to Colorado is a result that they probably won't be happy with. So I think that this is as good a situation as it's going to get for us in this season. I think that's probably the best chance that we're going to have for a result. So, if not now, then when is it going to happen?
Yeah, I think that's how I'm kind of thinking about it. Like, they have played now every single game on the road this season since the return to play. They there has to be some kind of like, it seems like at some point they can't keep relying on this crazy kind of like form or even, I mean, in this draw to Colorado Springs, their one goal is a penalty. So, I mean, is there a little bit of a regression showing from New Mexico United? Like, is this now, are they ripe for the taking in terms of they're hitting their kind of, I guess, return to play like slump? Like, can we get at them right now?
Yeah, you would think so, but I think on one hand, New Mexico United, I feel like they're one of those clubs that really do thrive on their fans and on their atmosphere at home games, and they've been deprived of that this season with the very strict protocols in place in New Mexico. On the other hand, they have plenty of experience with going away to hostile places and playing well and winning with that U.S. Open Cup run they had last season. So
sure,
it's when you look at the stats, they're still twice as clinical as us. Literally, I mean their conversion rate is almost double ours. Shooting accuracy is better than ours. We're better defenders, but as you said, Phil, if you can score, then you have a chance. So personnel has changed for us and for them as well. So maybe that'll be the edge. Maybe having a MLS level defender in Coleman will help us kind of deny Chris Weehan, who's like going off for some strange reason. And he's also, I think, big enough and strong enough to go up against Devin Sandoval if he starts. But I don't know. This one, we'll get into the predictions, but I just feel a draw coming on.
I
want to be wrong. Clearly, I want to be wrong.
No,
I would love to be wrong.
Take that back right now.
Let's
ask Nostra Austin though, because
oh god,
for real, he's been killing it in the prediction league. But I think the one thing that is interesting about this particular matchup with New Mexico, Christian, you brought it up. They draw 1-1 with Colorado Springs, and in particular in this match, we talked about Locomotive's match in Colorado Springs and the fact that no shots on target, pretty abysmal offensive performance. New Mexico goes up there a little more free flowing, a little bit more of an attacking kind of throwing their cares to the wind. They generate 2 shots from open play. And I don't mean shots on target. I mean shots. They had 3 shots in the game. One of them was a penalty. So, I mean, 2 open play shots is crazy low offensive output. Does it help, help us grasp, I guess, Colorado Springs' approach a little bit better in terms of they have done a pretty good job now of like limiting to teams that are on paper and in the standings better than them. And are we seeing that New Mexico is kind of on par, I guess, with Locomotive, like not markedly better than us in many ways?
I think so I don't know what to think of when anyone plays against Colorado, even us, because before New Mexico, they were down 4-0 to Bold at halftime, and they let in 4 goals and a half.
True.
And somehow they score 4 in the second half, which is what gives them the 1 point to take home. So I don't know what to think when anyone plays Colorado. So it's hard to take that into consideration. But I just think that, especially when it comes to us against New Mexico, like I think the second game against them last year was the only time where I felt that they outplayed us. Everything else, whether it be any of the win that they got or the draw that they got, it's just been kind of scrappy. And credit to them, for being able to do that. I wish that we could do that, at the rate that they are able to. But, it hasn't been, we don't get dominated by them, even to the level that, we sometimes get dominated by Phoenix, with the exception, like I said, of the one game last year against them. And they've all been games that really could have gone either way at any point.
The main man, Chris Wehan, Mika, that you brought up, Romeo Parks, Andrew Tenari, Guzman, Najem, they all are brought off in this game against Colorado Springs. Do you think Troy Lesesne was resting those players for this match?
Probably. Yeah, probably. And he probably was well aware of the fact that they would have to be playing at the swap. And now that I think about it, 2 shots really does scream of like fatigue and a team bereft of ideas. So maybe the combination of them resting those players and what they saw those players do in Colorado just sets them up to try and bounce back against us. One thing I want to add to that I think shows kind of how different these 2 sides are is I feel like Locomotive is we're so businesslike in the way that we go about the game. I mean, we just want to execute Mark Lowry's plan and win, and that's it. I feel like New Mexico United are just like masters of the dark arts. Like I can't remember a fixture against them where I didn't leave like pissed off because of something that they did or, whether that be like fouls or cards or just the way they play. They're like kind of like an Atletico Madrid type side almost, not in tactically, but just bastards. You know what I mean? So, and they love that. I think they revel in that kind of reputation. I mean, they've totally taken this Kings of Chaos thing on board and just added that. Exactly.
Hey.
Exactly.
No, but they're bastards. They dive, as was highlighted in Austin's fantastic meme in the after the loss to United. So yeah, I think that's ultimately what is so frustrating about these fixtures is that they feel so disconnected from like tactics, form, whatever. There's these like random moments that they thrive on. And I'm hoping in this particular matchup that we see Locomotive's assertiveness and ability to kind of control how a game goes. In some of these matches, or in Locomotive's past, we've been able to see how they can assert themselves over their opponent, and for once I want to see it work against United. That's really, for once I want to feel in control of what's going on, and hopefully that is the approach. I think and I don't want to be too bold, but I think if Troy Lesesne comes to the swap thinking that he'll play as defensive as he did the last time, I think we have the tools and like the ability now to make that not a viable approach. Hopefully. So we'll see. I don't know. Because they sat back against us last time is the bottom line. They sat back, they hit us on the counter, and it worked in that case. I just hope that now we have the ability to make that not a viable strategy for visiting the swap. You can't bunker.
Yeah, I think that'll also depend on if Bryam starts in the midfield again. I think that's what scares me about that, is that his last performance kind of lends itself very well to being vulnerable to a team that's just looking to counter, just sit back. So
sure.
Hopefully he either
Bryam is one card away from suspension, so
that too, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's not he won't be suspended for the next game, so I mean,
no, I'm saying like
but
I can see them like baiting him into some kind of situation where he gets carded, and I think that's a big thing too. We'll see how the officiating is, because that has been an issue in some of these fixtures in the past.
Yeah. No, that's absolutely true. The thing that might be toughest to predict about this game, the result and how we get there. Christian, can you give us an update on where we stand in the score prediction table? And then we'll go into our predictions for this one for United.
Yeah, it was quite a week last week. I will say that everyone scored this week, as opposed to last week, the Colorado Springs match where no one scored.
Yeah.
Everyone scored this week. So Phil had predicted a 2-0 win with Amara's goal, so you get 1 point for the result. I had predicted a 3-0 win with an Omar goal, so I got 1 point for the result. Mika predicted a 2-1 win with a Foxy goal, so she gets 3 for the result and the score. Austin also predicted a 2-1 win, but with a Gomez goal, so he gets 3 for the result and the score. Phil, they're running away with it, man. So Austin remains in the lead with 14 points. Mika jumps a little further ahead of us with 10 points now, so 4 behind Austin. So theoretically, she could tie for first with her prediction this next week if she gets the result, the score, and the goal scorer right. Oof. And Austin gets it completely wrong. So Austin, if I were you, I would just pick the same result as Mika, TBH. That way you're guaranteed a point.
This is like some double Jeopardy shit right here. I wager $1.
Like, so yeah, Mika with 10, Austin with 14, and then Phil and I still tied with 6.
All right.
So we could also theoretically tie with Mika if we predict the results and the score correctly. So that's where we're at right now.
All right. Well, I guess in the interest of fairness, Christian, do you want to start us off with the first prediction for score and goal scorer for this one?
Yeah, I hate myself, but I think I'm gonna have to go take the logical. Oh, hold on, my computer's not working to type this in here. Take the logical approach and say that I believe that we're gonna come out with a 1-1 draw, and I think that. I'm going to go for something not so obvious this time. I'm going to say that, I guess this is maybe a little bit obvious, but I'm going to say that Dylan scores.
What was your scoreline again?
1-1.
Well, as the tied for third, I guess, in this case, I'm going to go. I want a win so badly that I'm just going to try to speak it into existence, although none of my predictions have been right. So I will go for United's defense has not been particularly good. And I look at the Phoenix match in particular as just like, I don't know, like they have the potential to just like completely implode defensively and be easy to play through. I hope they're like that. I'm sure they won't be. But I will hope against all hope, and I will say a 3-1 Locomotive win. Damn. The first win over New Mexico United. and I will say that Gomez spent the last match just getting his bearings with his left foot with power inside the box. And he finds a target in this one because I think I think he was building confidence, maybe building some muscle memory in this last one. So maybe he can find the corner from that narrow angle this time. But that's my shout now. Hoping against all hope, as I said. Mika.
Okay, I'm going 1-1 as well. Christian. I'm gonna say Dylan Mars scores our only goal. But I hope that you're right, Phil. I would love to just smash them.
I just, at this point, like, it may not be the logical choice. I just want that. So I'm just saying it. Austin. This is, I mean, everybody strap in because this is what's about to happen. Like,
yeah, Austin, tell us what's going to happen.
Yeah, like whatever he says is going to, that's what is about to take place.
I will say he has been the only person, and it's only happened once, but he's been the only person to get the 4 points for the score, the results, and the goal score. And that was for our second match against RGV.
Oh, damn.
Okay, so a lot of thought. Just based off the history in this matchup, just where we're at, where New Mexico's at, I think we're gonna take it 3-2. Just it seems like there's a lot of goals scored in this matchup. That's the way it looks like it's gonna go. Got a lot of chances last match, and I think they're finally gonna connect. And I think Mark is gonna bring on Garijo around minute 80 and is gonna score the game-winning goal.
Yikes.
I'm not sure if my blood pressure is set up for 5 goals.
I'm going to need to visit my cardiologist at the end of that one.
You gotta give me the all clear to go to the match.
Yeah, my friend said that there's going to be 5 goals. Like, am I good? I've been eating less salt this week, like, to try to prepare. Well, there you have it. It's going to be a 3-2 Locomotive win. That is simply what's about to happen. So, no, I'm sure it promises to be a crazy match. New Mexico seems to really bring out the madness against Locomotive. So I'm hoping our players can navigate that and see their way through to a result. But that does bring us to the end of the episode. I hope everyone has enjoyed. You can find us on all the major podcast platforms. Go ahead and subscribe. iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, and you can find us on Twitter at Seriously Loco for all of the analysis, memes, and links to our Patreon, which you can also find us on Patreon. And you can support us a little bit if you're into some extra content. As we said, Mika's article just went up on her experience at the match on Saturday, and we're all looking forward to another big one against New Mexico United with a few more fans in attendance. So hopefully you will join us for that one. And until next time, stay loco.